Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I do my wash changes on my goldfish fry because it's actually really hard and I didn't really know how to do it, so I had to kind of teach myself, and I thought I'd share it with you. Um, so yeah, first thing I do is I have two goldfish bowls and I have a siphon, and I basically siphon the dirty water from the tank into the goldfish bowls. With the bigger fry, I have different ages. With the bigger fry, it's a lot easier to do. You basically just want to siphon food waste and other types of waste off the bottom of the tank. Here's just a really cute clip of one of my fry. So yeah. The older fry are definitely a lot more brave. They kind of just come up to the siphon. You don't need to worry about them getting sucked up. They really, at that age, don't. Then you want to make sure that the new water that you're putting in is the same temperature as the tank water. That's really important. If it's not the same temperature, like it isn't here, fiddle with it. Take water out, put new water in. Do all this before you add any dechlorinator. Obviously now I have the correct temperatures, so you can start adding in the new water after you've dechlorinated, obviously. So for dechlorinator, I use Aquasafe. You put in as much as you need for how big your tank is. And then I basically put the new water higher up so that you can create a constant flow of water. I put mine on the other tank. Obviously that's dangerous and you might not want to do something like that, but just figure out where's good for you. And doing it like this means that you have a constant flow of the new water into the tank. That's not too fast for the fry. It means that they can slowly get used to the water and you're not shocking them by just pouring a big load of water into the tank with them. So now we're going to move on to how I clean the small fry tank. So I put the siphon very firmly to the bottom of the small fry tank and make sure there are no fry directly near it. And I have to start pumping really quickly for a bit to try and create a suction, which is always the scariest part. But as long as you've got the pump very, very hard and firmly on the floor, you shouldn't really suck anything up. So once you create a suction, you can kind of start to move the pump around. It will look kind of weird, but what I do is I tap the pump onto the floor of the tank and I tap it before I move it anywhere. And this is basically me trying to make sure that any fry that are near where I'm moving the siphon will move and disperse, because I really don't want to suck any of the fry up. And in this tank I counted yesterday, I have 86 fry, and they range from literally 4 days old to 2 weeks old. Some of them are absolutely tiny, and in the older tank I have 7 big ones, so the chances of me sucking one of them up is literally nothing. And obviously if I can not suck any of these babies up, that's what I want. I clean both of the fry tanks every other day, and I do a wash change every other day. I make sure that I do at least a 50% wash change, usually about 75%, maybe even 100% some days. And this just basically keeps the water nice and clean for the fry, as they are very, very vulnerable, very delicate. So things do happen when you're doing wash changes on fries, and I did actually suck one of the babies up this time, but it was absolutely fine. I grabbed a container and I scooped it out and I basically put it back in. It was absolutely fine. I was lucky. If you can avoid this, that's what you want to do, but these things do happen, and most of the time they're going to be fine. They just get sucked up through the water, and you just have to check before you throw out any of the old water that you haven't got any fry in there, because sometimes you just do and you don't realise. So before I chuck away any of the old water, I always make sure, and that's why I do the water changes with a goldfish bowl and not a black bucket or something, so that I can really see through and make sure that there aren't any fry left in the bucket. Everybody's different. If you would rather use a different method to do the smaller fry, that's fine. There is the method of using tights at the end of your siphon, but I don't personally like to do that, as the fry can sometimes get stuck in the little netting in the tights, and this can damage them. Again, when you're adding the water back into the tank, you want to create the flow. When you're doing it with the smaller fry, the fry are going to be affected more by the water coming into the tank than the bigger ones are. They are going to get moved around. That's okay, as long as it's not so much that it's going to shock them. If it's moving them around a little bit, we don't need to worry about that. That's fine. For my fry, I use liquid fry number 1, and I use this for pretty much all ages of my fry, but definitely for my younger fry, as it's liquid, it's easy for them to eat. You put in 1 drop for every 4 litres of tank that you have, and you do this 2 or 3 times a day. I do it 4 times a day. As they get a little bit older, you can move them onto Hikari First Bites, which is basically like tiny crushed pellets. It has all of the nutrition that they need. And then as they get even older, you can move them onto Liquid Fry number 3, which is again a crushed up pellet type of thing that has even more nutritional value for them as the fry grow. A lot of people use baby brine shrimp. I personally do not do this. I then put my finger into the tank and swirl all the food around so that it starts to sink for the fish, which some people might think is kind of gross, but I like to make sure they don't get all the food. If anyone was wondering, I got pretty much all of the equipment for the tanks from Amazon. Having a heater, a thermometer, a sponge filter and an air pump is so important if you want to raise baby fry, goldfish fry, whatever type of fry. They need a constant, very stable temperature. They need the sponge filter so they don't get sucked up through a filter. The air pump creates things like bubbles, which increases oxygen levels in the tanks, which is something that's really important for growing fish. And if you have any questions on raising goldfish fry, then let me know.